September 30th. It's the Policy Advisory Committee meeting. We'll start with attendance. Andrew, we'll start with you.
Andrew Hennius, attorney for the district.
Ram Mesnati, assistant superintendent.
Kenny Duba, superintendent.
Jennifer Lima, school committee member. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, awesome. Ken, do you have a preference?
Well, do you want to do the physical restraint one first?
Did you and Rachel
Yes.
You did? Okay,
Yes,
awesome.
We talked through it, went through it. She added comments. She didn't go into it. We didn't make changes in the document, just added comments, and her and I
Okay.
discussed it earlier today, so it's, no, I can't add it up. No, I can't do it.
Okay.
So it's the physical restraint crisis intervention with students.
Yes. Oh, today. Okay, so today I see she. Okay.
Do we have the policies and process folder?
Mm-hmm.
Was that attached to the one?
No, I'm trying to find it now.
Yeah.
If you go in, I'm going to share the folder with you, or
Yeah, you
Actually,
should
you know
have
what?
access to the folder because it's been shared with you.
I got it right now.
Okay.
I got it. Yep.
Okay, so do you want to just go through the comments that she made, Ken? Because the last time we had gone through JIC, and then the direction was to go through JICR and see if there was anything in there that needed to be incorporated.
we think JIC has everything.
Okay.
So
I do notice a couple comments. So one of them is, her comment that she made is, the annual review of the procedures regarding our restraints must be done at the beginning of the school year. The policy is available on the district website under policies, and then the link is there, and Rachel has a note. What would these, meaning the procedures, look like? We have the policy in the state brochure that we give out. Does she make another brochure, or is it just the policy? I think this is part of the mediation agreement, but I read this as the annual training, not just like, right, the annual review of the procedures and the training must be done at the school year, so I'm not sure what she's asking what they look like. I mean, to me, that's the policy, right? There's nothing separate from that?
no, the annual review of the procedures must be, right, that would be this document right here.
Yes,
That would
okay,
be this document, that would be everything.
okay,
No, she doesn't need to make any other brochure. It's just this document here that we're working on
Yep.
would be what would be shared and reviewed.
okay. So, this, she's got some comments about adding things to the actual policy, which was taken directly from the regulations, and we had before hesitated to do that. So, okay.
I know she actually, I was CC'd on an email, she actually wrote to Dave Cianco to sort of bring that to his attention.
Okay,
I think
good.
we all agreed it was a good catch by her, but it is still what's exactly in the regulations, so.
Please log in through the Google Home app.
Okay.
Oh,
Hello.
Wow.
We were using it. I don't know, something we had on earlier. So.
I'm just telling her those are the regulations, so we cannot change. That's that also. That's that also. That's that also. That's that also. Okay, so those are basically all of her comments. So going back to the top then,
What about, there's one, maybe it just didn't come off of mine, so down at the bottom of page 3, under limitations, the heading will become limitations on the use of restraints. Did that, and that would have been straight out of the regulations
I think
as
it,
well.
would- yeah, it was straight out of the
So,
regulation,
okay.
yeah.
She had, just add from self-harm, which would make sense, because you're protecting the student from self-harm, but that's not what the regulations state.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and hopefully the, regulations get updated. I'm just gonna skip those because I'm not gonna go through and do them all now, but there were some questions that I had put at the bottom that she has,
The end down there,
yep.
yes.
So, under procedures for investigating complaints, we didn't identify who the person would be, who would conduct the, oh, you did talk to her, right? And
Yes,
she's
so
okay
that
with that, okay.
would be, herself. So
Director
then we
Rowe.
also need to make sure that anywhere people personnel is, we change to student services
Yep.
in the document.
Okay, I'll make that note. So I had a question about where and what the form is that's referenced in the mediation agreement. Do we have that? Because we mention it in here, so we should include it.
So I make which form? I'm sure we do, because I know we had to give all the attachments to RIDE, so just wanna make sure I know which one.
I just wanna find it. I think we had talked about it. Oh, here it is, informing parents and guardians, it's the reporting form to the parents and guardians when a restraint has been used.
I believe, and I would have to double check with Rachel, but I believe we actually already have a form, because I know there is a form that they're supposed to fill out and report back to the parents, and I don't think that was altered.
Okay, so do we need to include that here since we reference it?
We certainly could, I guess
Including but what are we, like, including a link to the form?
Well, I
or-
think we've included the actual form, like I know like on the weapons policy, when we've talked about like the form there that has to be filled out, like we had a copy of the form in the policy.
I mean,
And I think there've been a couple other ones, like the bullying one,
One of the health ones.
the health one.
One of them.
I knew there was something else. If we're referencing it, I feel like we should include it.
I don't know which one you're talking about, but I agree, like that way, well, no, like I agree across the board on that concept is like if they don't have the form, then and it changes over time, then the policy, like they
Right.
need to be connected or at least referenced. Which one are we on?
Physical restraint, JIC.
You know what, Jen, I'm looking at the next bullet, the district shall in the same reporting form offer a meeting. That's new language from the mediation piece, so that may not be on the original reporting form,
Okay.
as I'm reading this in total.
That was my understanding, that
Yep.
there were changes made to the
Yep.
form and that we need to,
That might be a Rachel question.
okay, so we need a copy of the form. And the last time, it's been a while since we talked about this, we had talked about how some of this is required by regulation and some of it is part of the mediation agreement. And what I did was I added a footnote where it's part of the mediation agreement, that way, cause we had talked about if it's not there, somebody's gonna go back to the policy and say, why is this in there, it's not part of the regulation, and take it out. So, I put footnotes in where the things are.
Mhm.
I figured that was the best way to do it. And then my other question on here is, the bus monitors and the drivers, are they trained in this restraint training?
So her response was some were, it was voluntary. We would only train specific people if we know that they have to be trained in that. And that's what we do with the training we do here in the district. right? So when we do the safety care training,
Yep.
right, it's for those that we know who need to be, because they're either part of the safety care team, or they are in situations where, and restraint, and also those strategies may have to be put in place, right? So not everyone is trained. So for bus drivers, bus monitors, bus aides, if we know that there's a situation where it could be a situation with students, we would make sure that they are required to go to that training.
So for staff, right,
Mhm.
all staff is required to be trained on the policy,
On the
correct?
policy.
And then know who to contact in the case that it needs to
Right.
be escalated, right?
Mhm.
Are the bus drivers trained on the policy?
Well, everyone has to be trained on the policy, yes.
Okay, so what happens on a bus where nobody has been trained?
If they need to restrain
they
a kid.
need to
If they,
restrain a
if they
child.
have to restrain, so if they're in a situation with that, I mean, they would have to be calling, they have to pull a bus over, I mean, and if they're not trained to restrain, they can't, so they would have to be calling for additional help during that time. If it gets to the point where it's unsafe, I mean, they may have to use best judgment, but if we know ahead of time with some of our students, we are training the staff that would be working with those students.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me, but I feel like there's a reason why we train the entire staff, because in theory, any child could need to be restrained at any
Mhm.
time.
But we don't train everyone in
But
restraint.
we train them on the policy,
The
right? And
policy,
in a
right.
building.
Everyone has to go through the policy.
The response time's quicker.
The response time is quicker and they
Mhm.
have access to a
Mhm.
person, so
But on
like,
buses they don't.
on a bus, they don't.
It's something I will talk to Rachel about,
Okay.
but it's not something that we do and
Yep.
necessarily would do with every bus driver,
Okay.
or bus
Okay.
monitor, or bus aide.
But they are at least getting trained on the policy.
The policy, yes.
Okay. Okay, I think we should have something in here about that. Like, because technically, like, I mean, I think if I read this, and if I was a parent or a guardian, well, I am, but, I mean, I would wanna know, like, well, what happens if my child is on a bus? Like, what is who has gotten training? Cause it only specifically says employees, like, it doesn't say like the bus contractors.
So Andrew, how would we do that? Because we are responsible for our employees that they go through reviewing policies, and we do that every year with them, and they have a form they have to sign off that they've reviewed all the policies.
Right.
Michelle does that with the bus contractors. Do we spell out bus contractors specifically, or do we leave it to North Kingstown School Department employees and contractors? Is that what
I'd stick with,
contractor?
yeah, because I mean, we don't.
Because then if we, I'm just thinking if we only say contractor, that could be anyone that's
Anyone
coming
that
in
comes
as a
into the
contractor,
school.
and it might be difficult to track that, because is it a contractor that's coming in, that's a contractor working on a building?
Well, I was gonna say,
versus a
to me, that's the
contractor
first thing
that's-
that jumps out in my mind, it could be someone
So-
doing some building work that you obviously wouldn't need trained.
Right. So I think if we're being specific, then is there anyone else
Are coaches
specific that we're
employees?
not, yes,
Coaches fall under employees. What
Mhm.
about volunteers that coach?
volunteers that coach, volunteers are volunteers, they're not
Yeah,
employees.
But so they're not. So assistant coaches get paid or don't get paid?
Assistant coaches do. If you're a
Yeah.
coach and assistant coach, you are. If you're a volunteer,
Yeah.
you're not following the same
Yeah.
protocols.
Volunteer
So are coaches
coaches,
trained
though.
on this?
What were you gonna say, Rob?
Volunteer
Coaches,
co-
I'm gonna say no right now, just
Okay.
because the coaches, when we bring in coaches, they have specific training that they have to do. And then it'd have to be all of the policies. Most coaches are already teachers, but not.
I was just saying that volunteer coaches have to follow the same,
Like,
meet
well,
the same steps as would a regular assistant coach.
So the way it's written right now, they should be all getting the training at least, right?
The safety care training?
Yeah. No, not the
No.
safety care training.
And
The
it's-
revision
and
of the review of the policy.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, I would think that the policy would be
Yeah.
reviewed by
Policy
everyone, the
would
training
Yeah,
wouldn't though.
they should be signing. That should be part of their packet. So,
Right.
the way it's written now, just
Yeah.
thinking about employees and
Yeah.
stuff. Could we do something where it's like contractors who this isn't the legal way, but like who have interactions with students. Does that
Like
make
you're talking
sense?
about like, I'm a TA and I work for the agency and you contract with me, like that type of a contract?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, well, trying to differentiate like the IT person that we hire to come in and do something, like that's not like this, you know, so I was trying to differentiate between like contractors who, like, I think we do contracting for physical, like
might-
OT and stuff like that,
You might
like I
even
feel
take
like.
the language from the volunteer statutes, which is, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's, individuals who have otherwise unsupervised interactions with students or something like that.
Yeah, that's where I'm leading, like,
So
you know,
it's
like,
not your
cause
IT
you want them to
person.
be aware of what our policy is on restraining a student, you know, like,
It'd be fine then.
and that would cover the bus drivers, but not have it have to be every single person that.
A person who works on an occasional or regular basis at a school site or other educational facility to support the efforts of a professional personnel, volunteers serve in the capacity without compensation or employee benefit of any type. Volunteers may have direct and unmonitored contact with children and or students on school premises.
Sorry, what page are we on here?
That's the,
She's
from the
on a different
volunteer,
journey.
that's from the volunteer policy and how it's defined.
Cause are we talking about under staff training on page 2?
Yes. Yeah, just the, not the actual like safety care training, but
Yeah.
the like being aware of what happens if it's needed. And to me, this would be kind of like a Title IX type policy where everybody gets trained on it, not just specific people. And when I say trained, I mean the policy.
So are we looking for like a provide all staff and moment in that second sentence? Is that
We
the goal?
can, yeah, something. Like some definition of what staff is.
I think that makes sense. Ken, what do you?
Yeah, I was just looking up a few other policies just to compare.
Well, Ken's doing, looking at that piece for number 4, when it was talking about, on page 3, where it was talking about physical restraint and crisis intervention, and there was the note from Rachel about adding self-harm, and then obviously it's not part of the regulation. Is that something that we wanna add, like, on top of the regulation, like, or noting it, or is that not allowed? Like, I see what she's saying there.
I think we decided to keep the language just to
Alright,
the regulation.
Perfect. regulation or the mediation
Or the
agreement.
mediation,
Alright,
yeah.
perfect. Can we clean that one up then?
Yeah, I just had stopped adding them because I was,
Yeah, no, that's fine, I just didn't wanna.
so aside from the form and, defining who is getting training on the policy, is there anything else that needs to change?
I'm assuming the answer is yes, but you audited, it to make sure that everything from the mediated agreements and the
And the,
statute.
yep. I'll do it one more time.
And I'm just looking,
For the,
I'm just reading it through one more.
yeah, for the
Just-
reporting requirements on page 5, where it says the staff member who administered the physical restraint / crisis intervention shall inform the building administrator. I think this stands, but like going back to the bus conversation, like, on, right here. Like, is that's still the path of what we would want them to do, correct? Like, we would want them to tell the building principal, like, so if you're driving a Forest Park bus and a restraint happens on the bus, you report it to the Forest Park principal? Cause that's what it says, and I think that's what the discipline,
That's what the
Yeah.
discipline says, right? Yeah.
Everything
yeah,
will go back.
would we want it to go anywhere else or no?
From building principal, then he or she will take care of it
Yeah.
from there.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that that was
Mhm.
the same consistency.
What if it was a coach? Is it still the principal?
Still would be the principal.
Andrew, the mediation agreement says special education director. Can I change the title in that, or does that void
Yeah,
the
you can
agreement?
absolutely change that
Okay.
title, yep.
What title are you gonna pick? I'm not joking.
No.
The
I'm
current
too-
one or the one Ken's changing it to?
The
One
one
we're
is
changing it to,
changing.
she's gonna go through and change everything to director of student services and, well, not, someone will, not you, but I mentioned that we'd have to
Yeah.
change that in this policy.
Yeah,
here.
I'll change it in the policy when I go
So-
through and give it the final.
Yeah.
Alright, to go back to your question about identifying who has to review this policy every year, so I was just looking at, I was looking for the other one about the coaches, but I didn't find anything in there that was consistent.
What are you looking to find?
What I was looking for earlier was pulling up the policies that were related to coaches and athletics to look at the training. I didn't know if there was anything specific in there, but there wasn't.
That's just something we'll have to add from a procedural level, right?
Well, I was just looking to see if it had anything specific to what type of training is required for them, and then see how that reflects to this policy, but
Mhm.
it's not specific in there.
I'm just thinking their staff and their
Mhm.
along with students.
Mhm.
And this, like, it even says, like, even if they're not, like, if a restraint has to happen, like, on that form, you indicate whether or not that they've received the advanced training, and so even if they're not receiving the advanced training, if something happens, like, you want the coaches knowing
Oh,
about those
no,
forms and
I'm
knowing
not, I'm
about-
not
yeah.
saying for them not to be trained,
Yeah.
I just wanted to look and see if, we're, you know, if
If
we're
that
being
was already in
specific
the-
here,
yeah.
was there something in either the coach's policy or the policy on,
Yeah.
professional behavior with students.
Yeah.
Because that talks about athletics too, but I did not see anything in there. It's okay that's not there, I just was looking to see if there was any
Mhm.
crossover,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so I would put here then where it says, note the Kingstown School Department Administration shall designate personnel to determine a time and methods to provide all staff, as well as, contracted agencies or contractors that are working directly with students. And I think that's what we're saying, we wanna be specific around what contractors.
Yeah, I sent the language from the volunteer policy just as sort of a,
I just think that's good, cause like if we're hiring TAs from perspectives, like we still want them to know what our our policies are, and depending on what role they're playing, like we might wanna make, they may already have that advanced training as part of their training of their job, but if not, we would like, we need to
Yeah,
have them
even if they
included
do,
in this.
needs to make sure it's the same as what we have here.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're saying staff includes,
No, it's not staff includes, I think it's staff and,
Right, so if that
I was
first
just gonna say
sentence.
for
oh, you wanna
purposes
do a
of this
you wanna do a
policy, yeah.
definition, I would do it, do definitions up at the top.
no, there's no definitions, that's why.
Could you-
So we can remember and see this, right, cause we gotta use this, I would have it in this paragraph.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm
Okay,
putting it, yeah,
alright,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
could even take
So
out
make
the
sure
and for all staff at the beginning, just put required training and then put a paragraph for staff and then a separate paragraph for
Jen's trying to not have to write every single time it says staff, like, right?
Staff and.
Like, staff and,
Yeah,
that's what she
I
was
got it.
trying to do, like, staff equal, in this policy, staff equals, that's what I was
Yeah.
hearing.
Right.
Okay, I trust that you can do that before it goes to the school committee, like, I don't think we have to, I'm comfortable moving this forward, knowing that you're gonna adjust that language as needed. I don't know how Ken and Rob feel about,
no, I agree with that.
Okay.
and I'm also comfortable moving it forward without having the form, but when it gets to the school committee, I'd like the form
Have
to
the
be
form,
included,
yep.
because, I want them to see it and understand what that is. And not linked, like actually physically.
Yeah, like attached to it. Okay, is there anything else from this policy as we move it forward?
This is, what if somebody that's like not our employee restrains a student? So like the NKPD or an EMT or someone like that, what happens with this then, with this policy?
I would say
Just
that's
follows a different
completely
path?
separate, because
Yeah.
if they
That's what I
are,
would-
there's whatever reasoning they have for that,
Yep,
right, I mean,
I'm just thinking about like
medical
notifications,
reasoning or.
notifications for parents and guardians, like those sort of things, like, I know it's different, but like if it's in our school buildings, like,
I was just gonna say, if it happens on school grounds.
yeah, like we call the EMT because we need assistance, or we call the NKPD because we need assistance. When they get there, based on what the situation is, they end up restraining a student for whatever reason, then what? Completely, like I'm not saying I'm saying in a just cause, in a totally normal way, then.
It's actually a great question, I've had that happen, with police,
Yeah.
but, and I'm
I
trying to.
feel like the parents and guardians should get the same notification
Mhm.
process, and the form should still be filled out, even if it's like something like that, just so that there's documentation and that there's
Right.
notification.
And we'll look at the form too and make sure that there's nothing on that form that would be done differently.
Yeah,
I mean, we could, because under it says proper administration, it's, trained personnel use of force safety requirements, we could even add a bullet for like first responders, like, or something like that, so that it's,
There's an exception for like a health
Yeah.
and safety exception, so my assumption would be if you use that same form, there would be some sort of a check there, the NKPD or a first responder. Here's what they did and why.
nothing bad, just
Yep.
documenting.
Yep.
If
because
it's in our
that way
building,
it folds into
yeah.
the policies for notification
Yeah,
purposes.
that's what I was thinking. I couldn't think of anyone beyond that would be restraining, but like, that would make sense to me, like.
So do we wanna add something like that?
I think it makes sense just so that the staff doesn't think, oh, like, we don't need to do this, even though,
Right.
cause it wasn't, like,
Yeah.
myself doing it.
Right.
That would be my recommendation. I defer to Ken though on.
Yeah, if we're gonna add anything different, we just wanna make sure it's part of the training process as well, that Rachel adds this in. I mean, it'd be separate from safety gear, but when we go over like what needs to happen after the restraint and the form's being completed, we just need to make sure it's part of the training process.
Yep.
So people are aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to move this forward with the changes that we discussed. And at the same time, as the changes to this are approved, sunset the JICR policy.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Awesome. So the next one's up were the attendance, not attendance, but like boundary related ones. And I know we had talked the other night at the school committee meeting about like creating a committee to look at that issue, big level.
Yeah, but those are separate,
Yeah,
like,
that's-
separate to me, right? Those are not this, I don't think we want that group to look at the policies. I think we
No,
look at the policies
Yeah, we don't want
and
them
then
looking
they
at the
Okay.
policies, we're
Yeah.
looking at,
implementing
Okay.
how to execute the
and we can-
policies, for lack of a better word, right? Or
no,
like,
I
no,
think some
we
of
can
them.
talk later, 'cause we really can't talk about that here, right?
or we're talking about the attendance
policies.
Right.
boundaries.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
it's attendance boundaries, assignment of students to schools and
The
establishing
whole purpose of us
attendance
putting
boundaries
together
and school
redistricting,
districting.
the whole purpose of us
Yeah.
putting together a redistricting committee is not to look at the policies, obviously,
Yeah.
to follow the policies, but to look at what are the best options.
Yeah,
And in
so-
redistricting, how are we doing that?
Right.
Yeah, so I think this group looks at
Okay,
those the current policies that we have to see if we think that there needs to be any adjustments made to them. If we need a larger body's opinion, we could always defer at request, but I feel like that policy stuff is here.
Right, and my
Okay.
thought too, if we're looking at this, is it something we're looking at, 'cause do we have to change something within our process
Yep.
of how we do that? So when I was reading the redistricting,
Which one we starting with?
JCAC.
I'm trying to find which one I had opened.
redistricting or the deviation from boundaries?
The deviation from boundaries, that was the first one I was reading, through, that was the
JCAC,
first
yeah.
one on
Is there a red marked version of that, right?
Yeah, there is.
yeah. So this one, as I was reading through, and I didn't get to finish reading the whole policy earlier, this is the process we would follow when a student's not going to the school they were assigned to.
Yes. So I guess before we dive into these, because I don't think anybody's done like a real thorough look at of these, I would say that if we're gonna review them here, that it definitely needs some review before we discuss, cause there are
Mhm.
several of them and they all have things.
So I guess just so from my understanding, as we're putting policies on the agenda, how are we choosing, I guess these policies are coming forward because, like, why are they on here? Is it because someone
Community mem-
noticed that
Community members
it
usually.
needs
Yeah,
to be
this one is on
changed,
here
or
because
what is
of
that? So we
the-
know as we're
Yeah.
reviewing it.
The one we just talked about was on there because of the process of the way students are currently being allocated out of districts. So that
Mhm.
was brought forward to review and see what on that policy needs to be changed. And the other three came along for a ride basically because they're all
Yeah.
Mhm.
interconnected.
I think there was
Alright.
two, that, like, usually it'll
That's
either come.
helpful, just so I know like
Yeah.
what lens I'm looking
Yep.
through
Mhm.
and from reviewing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that one particularly was about, I think all four of them came forward because, one, we knew that we were having, that the possible redistricting was coming forward and making sure that, like, we have the policies that you all can utilize and if there was any clarifications, et cetera. But then also, with like two or three different student issues, like when we were then looking at them, we were like, oh wait, we could probably improve the language in this one or change the language. This one hasn't been looked at since 2012, you know, that sort of stuff. So I think it's a combination of when they come up like that, so.
Yeah, cause like this one, like,
Yeah.
in practice, like, it doesn't cover siblings, it doesn't cover when the timeline for the requests have to be made, it doesn't talk about how registration is, you know, first come, first serve,
Mhm.
it doesn't talk about like what the form and the process is, there's no
Response time.
response time to notify parents, there's no, requirement in here for like reporting out on how many students are currently like districted out of their home school, whether by choice or not by choice, so.
How the wait lists work.
Yeah, like, so there's a lot of things with this policy, based on what we've heard from parents, could definitely use some review, you know, and hopefully, you know, prior to it happening next year.
Which is way earlier than, you know, like we think. Like the process starts way earlier.
Right, like we had actually brought this forward initially in May to hope to try to get it fixed for this year, but it just didn't.
There were other
Yeah,
priorities.
there were other priorities.
So what would be the best next step on this one? Like Jen and Ken, like does the administration wanna go through and like type up stuff, or since Jen has like the knowledge of what she's seen from the school
I think
committee
I would
lens,
say
does it make more
there's,
sense for
I
her
would
to?
just kind of like bullet on the side, or somebody put those comments and I wrote down.
It's on the bottom,
They
Here.
are in there, yeah, at the bottom of each policy.
just limited, but,
Okay.
so either Jen could draft it and then you could edit what she wrote, or you could draft it and then we could give feedback on that, you know what I mean, like depending on, I personally think she should draft it and then you should edit it, just for sake of time and knowledge, but I would defer, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah, it's whatever Ken wants to do, is
Yeah.
fine.
have Jen write
Yeah,
about
if
it.
you have, you know, what I mean, just from what people have been.
Yeah, I feel like
putting
some
forward
things
as
like,
concerns, and then we can take it and look and say, okay, how do we put that in practice?
yeah,
What's
like this,
reality?
yeah, or
Yeah.
what else do we think, or whatever, I'm just thinking, like, sometimes, like, you all have to take the lead, like, rating and stuff, like, we're not gonna do that, but this one, I feel like we could maybe present some stuff to y'all, and then you could let us know what makes sense.
Okay, I'll work on that.
That one was JCAC, right?
Yes.
And then what's the other ones? Cause it might not make the same sense. JCAA.
I think JCAA is, no, the JCA is probably, should be looked at also, cause it's the assignment of student to schools, and that is kind of hand in hand with the redistricting, it covers some of the same ground.
I wonder if there's a world where those
Could live
three,
together,
where those
yeah.
three should live together.
So
'Cause
I'll look
that's
at all four of
ridiculous.
those and see like what is happening there, and then bring a proposed draft forward.
I think that would make sense, because I mean, if you have a policy about establishing school attendance boundary lines, then part of
Yeah.
that policy is if there is a deviation, or, you know, voluntary versus involuntary requests, that could all be part of that one
Yeah.
policy, that we're not looking for.
Yeah, I
Multiple
personally
ones.
like if it's a topic like one policy with sub headers in it, because I feel like it does get complicated, and also like from a implementing it standpoint, like the staff having to go and look at 4 or 5 different things, if you miss one, like that's a lot. So I would, if it makes sense, I would definitely commence them.
Okay, I'll look at those.
And then before Jen does that, Ken and Rob, is there anything from your all's perspective that from working in other districts you were surprised that we didn't have in our policies, or, and you don't have to know this answer, but like I think this is where like your lens on this would be super helpful, is like, you know, is there things that you're surprised we don't have, or things that are in there that you're wouldn't understand how to implement? Like I think that's the lens for the next meeting of like getting feedback from you all on would be helpful.
You talking about for the redistricting?
Yeah, for there's 4 policies.
Yeah.
It's the JCA, JCAR, JCAA, and then JC.
Yep.
AC,
No,
like
I-
any of those, like from an administrative perspective, like what might need to be changed, cause Jen knows from like what we've seen in like questions and appeals from families, but from you
Mhm.
all, there could be different feedback, I think, or different questions. Or things that are in there that you're handling or dealing with, or have handled or dealt with, that need to be called out a little bit. Cause maybe we're doing in practice, but not.
If you see anything
policy.
like that, just drop it in there as like just
Yeah.
a note, and
An
I'll
extra thing at the
circle
bottom or
back
something.
with you, yeah. transportation stuff. Erin, did you have a chance to look at that?
I did not, I am sorry.
Okay, that is fine. So
I will definitely have it for our next meeting.
the next one up is HIV infection, which needed to be reviewed, as part of RIDE's annual review. It hasn't been reviewed annually, it probably should have been, cause it's pretty out of date in terms of the policy. I got, Colleen's input on it, so this draft here that's redlined is based on working with her for her input.
Is it the 2009 one? 2009? Is that the last?
Yeah.
For 2012?
Yeah, so like we said, a lot has changed around how we view this, and a lot of the language was very,
Is this one? This one's by law, right?
mhm.
Has the law changed?
The law has not changed, but
I still think we should I'm not saying it.
The law
but-
hasn't changed in terms of the curriculum, but there actually is not a regulation that governs this in terms of like how the policy is supposed to be written, like they don't have,
Yep.
like with the other ones. And one thing that's not in the policy that I thought we might wanna add is the statute that talks about how, that this is part of the curriculum, and, I think this is one of the areas that parents can opt out of, right, Andrew?
I believe that to be
Yeah.
correct, yep.
So I think that should be in the policy also. But basically, the updates for this are basically just to update the language to reflect how we speak about HIV/AIDS today versus how we did 10 years ago, to talk about universal precautions, and, protection under the law and anti-discrimination, and, promoting a safe and healthy environment.
Where did the definition of HIV come from?
It came from, I wrote it down, is it not in here? HIV.gov.
Where did you write that down?
Oh.
I was just looking at the definition.
It's down here under, routes of transmission.
Maybe just referencing it
Yep.
under the like citing the definition.
One thing that I highlighted, well, two things that I highlighted were, under the philosophy, it currently says the North Kingstown School Committee is committed to the provision of a healthful environment for its students' employees and to ensure the establishment and maintenance of standards and expectations which will fulfill this commitment. Did not love that. I don't know what it should say, but I did not like the way that read, as well as under the part of the definition, where it says both asymptomatic and symptomatic people must deport themselves in a manner sufficient to protect themselves and others from infections. I felt those are both very, negative.
There's other words.
Yes, yes.
There's different ways to say that, most certainly. Are there two different laws that govern this one?
Yeah.
1617, I believe,
16,
is the one that
17,
speaks
yeah.
specifically to it. 162217.
So you wanna take that line about the, like B and A basically and spell it out more in our policy, is that what you're saying, Jen, about the exemption piece?
Yeah, it doesn't currently exist at all in our policy. There's nothing about the curriculum or the fact that you can
Well, it
opt out.
references the law, so like, but parents would just have to go to that law, like, in the law, it says that you can
Right,
opt out, but like,
right.
so it's in there, but it's not
It's not,
clear,
right.
would be how I would describe it, like, so I would recommend just using that language and then
Okay.
just referencing back to it, like pursuant to 162217, like written like how you request, and that they can exempt.
Okay,
I would just pull it exactly from there.
okay. Where do you see that?
16,
No, where do you
What is
see it
that?
in the policy?
it's not, oh, where did I see the, oh, it was on the red line in the part that you had in yellow.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe it's the part you added.
Yeah, that's, I added it, cause it wasn't
Yeah.
in there at all,
Yeah.
so I think we should
Yep.
add that.
I do think it would be good too, up at the top on our policies, like under, I don't know if it would go under purpose or philosophy, but like kind of the purpose of this policy is to have the district be in alignment with the state law. So I don't know if we wanna, we always like kind of reference it wherever it makes sense, but I don't know if like under that, like the purpose of this policy is to have the district be in compliance with this law. Like, I don't know, I think that would maybe be helpful, cause it can kind of show that trajectory of maybe why a district has a certain policy and where it's connected.
Okay.
So it's not a big change, but I would just put a sentence maybe under the purpose.
It also comes out, I'm just checking right now, the Department of Health, school health regulations also has requirements that mirror the 162217.
Yeah, that's the one, they're
Yep.
both linked in here, I think, Jen
Yep.
has the other one, yeah, like it would be, like in it, like it would, you could list them, like the laws, this and this.
Yep.
Then I would say, if we're gonna add that, the line that, we had added under purpose, that the district is committed to the development of policies and implementation of programs that focus on non-discrimination, awareness, prevention, and health support, we could replace our current philosophy that includes maintenance of standards and expectations with that.
Where do you see, in, where does it say that they should be reviewed annually?
Where do I see?
Did you say at the beginning that this one's supposed to be checked
Uh,
every year?
This is one of, it's on RISE annual health
Yeah,
report every
it's
year.
one of those
Yeah.
policies that we have to check
Mhm.
off on.
Yeah, so I wonder if on our school committee, like on the list of all the school committee policies, like there's, I would say like 5 or 6 of those that are supposed to be done annually, like
Mhm.
maybe we should like designate those, like where it says like most recently updated, like the date, maybe they could have like an asterisk or something that would note that they're supposed to be done annually, just for like a quick
Okay,
glance, do
yep,
you know what I mean?
yep.
So that way, like, one, if a citizen or a parent or guardian saw that it hadn't been done
Yep.
since whatever date, like that would be like a note for them, but then also like when new school committees come in, like they would be able to at quick glance
And
know,
see what
like,
it
hey,
was.
these 6
Yep.
need to be done every single year,
Yep.
like the policy chairs would have a good reference for that.
Okay.
Obviously, sometimes it would get triggered from like the other way, like, but clearly this one had not
No.
gotten triggered.
Yeah, it got missed last year.
Or, yeah. Yeah.
And I think probably because the law hadn't changed, so
Yeah, you just assume it's fine.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
Yeah. I'm sure this happened, but like with the health curriculums that we just approved, do we know if the Health and Wellness Committee went through and ensured that these things were implemented in that?
The covering HIV, you mean?
Yeah, like annual lessons on nature, transmission, and prevention.
I don't know if they did it to that extent. I
Yeah.
know that it was discussed
Yeah.
that they do have.
Yeah, so maybe like once the school committee reapproves this, that would be something that we can direct to
Back.
that committee
Okay.
just to double check. I would assume the people who created that curriculum are aware,
Are
but
aware.
just
We
to.
can look and see, cause it wouldn't be at every grade level or it's developmentally appropriate in
Yeah,
the lesson, but we can look at that and see if there's
yeah, it just might be good to have
specific
that
lessons in the
committee do it.
middle school, high school level.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it says here, topics appropriate to greater developmental
Mhm.
level.
Yeah, not,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. I just
Yeah.
don't remember that being talked about when we did the health curriculum piece. Like I remember it being in some of it, but just, I think it would just be a good circle moment to double check, just to make sure.
Yeah, I know for sure the 6 through 12.
Yeah. Who are the supervisors in this policy that are being referred to? Training for supervisors to communicate and ensure compliance.
Good question.
I could assume, but we might wanna be
Yeah.
more clear about that.
The HIV is included in the health curriculum, Erin, so you know, I was looking at it.
In the one that we just got?
Yeah.
Yep. I assumed that it would be at some different grade levels, but I don't remember if that is.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
That's great.
Yep.
Do we know if the copy of this policy is included in the student handbooks? Did you write that language in?
Where is it?
It's on page, I don't know what page numbers are on. You're not gonna be able to see them when I say font. It's in the bigger red.
No, I think Colleen did.
Yeah. So it's right above right of
Yeah,
appeal.
I see it, yeah. I'm
Um,
pretty sure that came from her.
Is there, do we know why that is? Like we don't put all of the policies in all the handbooks, so I didn't know if it is because she thinks it's part of a regulation or because she thinks, like, you know what, that would be one I'd just be curious about because that is not consistent with what we do with a lot of our policies.
No, wait, that didn't come from her. Hold on.
What is a conspicuous place?
I don't see it in the high school handbook.
I think I took dissemination from the other HIV policies that are out there, which all lists that.
Yep. So we have some autonomy on if we want that there or not.
Yes.
personally don't know if that needs to be in there because we have parents and guardians sign off
Yep.
on all of our policies, so I don't know personally if that needs to be in each student handbook, but I would defer to Ken and Rob on their thoughts on this policy being included in each student handbook.
I will say, actually, I'm looking at it, that it was in here prior because I crossed out.
Yeah, it was one of those
Yeah, it
bullets.
was one of those bullets.
Yeah.
This, the HIV policy?
It's
Mhm.
not, I'm going through the high school and it's not in here.
So it's in the existing policy, written like that, and it is proposed to be in the new one, and I'm saying I think having it as part of the portfolio and checked off in Aspen is good enough personally.
Yeah, we didn't put it in the policy.
Like I get some should be in the student handbook because they.
Yeah, we have a few of them in there.
Yeah, but this one to
But
me.
I don't think it's necessary to be in the handbook.
No, unless
itself.
it's mandated, I would recommend it not needing to be,
Okay.
personally. We could reference it if we wanted to, maybe, but,
Should it still, I think it should still be posted in each administration building though.
Mhm. Yes.
like on a wall.
Yeah, and usually like in one, like in the break room, like where you have all those other things that nobody looks at, like the minimum wage and like your OSHA rights and,
Why would we want that posted?
because you want, people to know that they're protected by law if they
Oh,
are
in
HIV
an HR
positive.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, in an HR way.
Or we can see if there's, with what we put out there, do we reference it within another document that we have?
Is this one that,
I mean,
I'm just thinking about a 5-page policy hanging on a wall at a school
well, I guess that would be my question.
versus like, is this included in like annual staff training?
Is
that
it
might be more
currently
effective.
being hung, because
How
it's
about that?
supposed to be, like, so that would be my question.
Without doing an audit of the buildings, I could not answer that question.
um,
That could be another designation we could do if we wanted to, like things that should be hung, things that should be signed off on. You know, like I just feel like it's so difficult to, with changing administrations and changing school committees to keep track of
Yep.
things like that, like unless you read every single and I read every single policy when I started, but
right,
like
yeah, they change.
yeah, well, and like what seems important one day and then we are looking at it in a different lens
I
versus
think this kind of goes to what we're talking about too, about updating the policy website, like,
Yeah.
And make it more like user-friendly,
Yeah.
like putting all the mandatory policies in one spot,
Yeah.
right, and then other ones
Yeah,
grouped by,
yeah,
like.
so we can, we'll do
Yeah.
that. So my personal recommendation is this should not be included in each student handbook. If we wanted to, at minimum, it could be part of the sign off on Aspen, because this is one that parents do have the choice to opt their children out of, and so you wanna make sure that you're having them look at that so that they're aware of it. Like that, I think, is an appropriate place for it to be on that thing where we do the Aspen thing, you read the different things. I personally don't think it needs to be hanging unless Andrew says for HR purposes it does.
No.
Or maybe something that is included in new staff training or something so that they're aware of that piece. Does that make sense? So Rob confirmed that one. Rob, do you know though if the HIV and AIDS annual lessons are very specifically on nature, transmission, and prevention? All 3 of those get hit? Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. So we don't need to have somebody check on that. Robin, Ken, any thoughts on training for supervisors to communicate and ensure compliance with NKSD HIV/AIDS policy? What,
I'm trying to who are we?
who that might be? I don't think we wrote that, I think it was in the old one.
Mhm.
Is that part of the law?
No. The law's pretty little, for lack of a better word. No, like it's only 3
Yeah.
sentences, it's
Doesn't say
not
much.
very exhaustive.
Even the regulations don't say much either.
No.
Yep.
Like they're fun, like they're clear, like I don't hate that they're not pages long, but they don't have that much in there as far as like the implementation piece of it. Do you think we should follow up with our state legislation on the updating of that? Maybe no.
had it last year and it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but we can, like that's something that we can
Yeah.
advocate for as well.
So what is the, I don't know what the training is on here, it's not clear, it just says training for supervisors, so what is the training that we
The
provide?
only thing I could think of that it might be
Where is the training
referencing is
come
like cleaning up blood.
So we do
Right, like,
bloodborne
but-
pathogen,
Yeah,
we do that already.
but I wonder if that's what it was, like I was trying to read the
It
sentences.
just says
see what it
training
was
for
referencing.
supervisors to communicate and ensure compliance with NKSD. So basically, we're gonna train the supervisors to make sure that they're communicating and ensuring that we're complying with the policy. That's kind of, if I break that down of what that,
It's in the section of promoting a safe environment, like, so
Mhm.
I was trying to read it.
so I think is it just making, basically, we wanna make sure people are reading and aware of this policy.
NKSD says it can't. I mean, this is going back to when this policy was written in 1986, and there was a lot of discrimination and a lot of misinformation about AIDS at that time. Like, this to me seems like it's almost saying like that we have to, if you had somebody in your building that was HIV or AIDS positive, like you need to train supervisors to understand that HIV and AIDS is not transmitted through casual contact, and that they're less likely to, like, and that therefore, like, they'll be less likely to have negative and inappropriate, like things to a colleague or a student's illness.
Mhm.
Like, that is very 1986 language to me, like, as far as like still important, but like, I think that's the lens it was
Yeah, I
coming
think it
through, of like
definitely is,
educating
yep.
supervisors that you can't get AIDS from casual
Yep.
touching,
Right.
basically, or like casual contact. So. I mean, I personally think if we are making sure that all staff knows this policy exists, like that
Yeah,
is good
something
enough.
that ensuring all staff, yeah, like,
So annual lessons on nature, transmission, and prevention of AIDS. Cause this is talking about, and then
Do you wanna just-
training,
but who are those lessons for?
that one I think is the
Is it
student
only
piece.
says annual lessons, so you be providing lessons to staff? I don't,
Well, I think
believe
that's
it
what the
is.
second,
Yeah, I think I'm assuming the first one relates to the requirements and the regulations and the
Yeah.
statute, which is part of the curriculum.
for students, so I
Yeah.
think we should specify that, 'cause otherwise it's kinda left open.
this is very specifically talking about managing the risk of HIV and AIDS discrimination. Employees because we're in promoting a safe environment, we're not in promoting an understanding about the disease part, like this is the very clearly the discrimination part.
Do we wanna table this until Colleen can come back and have the conversation with us also?
I mean, we can, but I don't think this particular part's, like, the Colleen, like.
No,
100%
I
the
was
Colleen
just
part.
saying,
Didn't she already give all her?
she did,
feedback?
I just feel like there's some resistance to some of the changes, so,
How so?
just in terms of like providing lessons, like why would we not just provide the policy on an annual basis?
No, I don't think that's what Ken was saying.
What were you saying?
No, what I'm,
He's saying, do we have to teach teachers
What I'm
every
saying is
single
the-
year
I
about
think
those
we-
three things?
I think they have to sign off on this every year.
But that's different than an
Yeah.
annual lesson on nature, transmission, and
Yeah,
prevention
no,
of
I don't
AIDS
think
and
they need to be
HIV.
taught, but I think.
I think
Yeah.
you wanted
students
clarity
need-
on who.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think he was
just
saying
saying-
clarity on who.
Yeah.
right, just if the annual lessons, like if that's for students, I think we should specify that so no one's
Yeah.
confused. The next one, the training piece, it's the policy, making sure all of our, all employees are aware and acknowledge the, NKSD's HIV/AIDS policy.
I think just
I think
rewording
it's
that
just the
second
wording
bullet.
of it. So
Adding
that way we
students to the
know.
first bullet and then rewording the second one.
Because when I see training, I'm like, what training are we doing? Like, is it specific training, like we have to do bloodborne pathogen training,
Yeah.
right? That's something specific we have to do. If it's not a specific training and it's just making sure people are aware and knowledgeable of this policy, we'll add it to policies that everyone signs off on at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think that's good.
and that would cover that.
So how do you wanna say that?
What's one that we have it,
I would just put annually, all staff will be made aware of the
annual
NKs.
review of,
Annually communicate.
Will be made aware of the NKSD, of the, of annually, all staff will be made aware of the NKSD HIV/AIDS policy. Or annually, administration will communicate to all staff and ensure compliance of, right, like leaving those words.
I wanna go back, like, when we, just make a note so I don't forget. On the part, I'll make a note, Jen, there's a part where it says, guidelines provided by the Rhode Island and federal laws, but it doesn't reference which,
Okay,
so I just put a note there for you. I just made a note up under item number 5 on page 1. Inform the public and staff about the measures while still maintaining their rights and confidentiality of the HIV positive person. I don't understand what that would look like in actuality.
I think it's just putting the policy out.
The school committee's policy concerning HIV positive persons is established to ensure the following. Inform the public, what does that mean?
Like to make them aware that we have a policy around these things?
Well, that is definitely not how I'm reading it.
Yeah.
While maintaining the rights and confidentiality of the HIV positive person.
Like instead of saying, hey, Erin's HIV positive, everybody be nice to her, like don't do this to her,
Yeah.
it's saying these are the policies and procedures that we practice in general in the event that there is. I think that's how I read it anyways. So like in general, we are providing the training in the event that there is, not just as it
Yeah.
relates to a specific case.
I mean, the policy manual is a public document online, so I think it can be certainly read that way.
About what measures, just the measures in
that-
general? The sentence is very,
Yeah, agreed on
very
that.
loosey-goosey.
Agreed on that.
Do you wanna change it to policy?
I just, do you know what I mean? Like, okay, we're informing the public and staff about measures while still maintaining the rights and confidentiality of HIV positive person. It's the public part that particularly I think is, like how are we doing that? Like, how would that get implemented by administration? Even though, like, yes, this is public, I wonder where that came from.
I'm looking in the
But just this guy.
It's
laws
the very top.
from, looking and see if it's in the
Who's
state
doing that?
policy.
Not me.
Something just happened.
Yeah, what's happening?
Who's that? Not it.
Oh, I hope it's not me.
It's definitely Andrew.
I did,
No,
did you say?
I'm not, I'm not.
That's a pretty safe bet, cause I was scanning down, I don't know what I did.
Is it
I'll
on
undo you.
Okay.
It's definitely true.
Because this is just in the philosophy. So the school committee's philosophy concerning was the old language of the policy title. The school committee's policy concerning HIV positive persons is established. Why does it say persons?
Because nobody calls them HIV infected anymore. It's like HIV positive person. That's how you.
Yeah.
Fixed.
It's a lot.
Undo. I think I got it, I think we're back.
But like, is the policy about welfare protection? You know what I mean? Like, what's the law called? AIDS education.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying because concerning HIV, not the people. That needs to come out.
Yeah,
as
that's the
established.
part I
Okay,
was confused
yeah,
about.
Okay. Yeah, will that make more sense if we take
Yeah.
that out? Okay.
Yeah, like, you know what
see
I
you're
mean?
saying,
Like,
yeah.
it,
I think I got HIV happy and I was just replacing everything. Because the policy had said infected students or employees.
Yeah.
We could just change it to say policy
yeah, that's what I was
concerning-
saying.
yeah,
Like, it just
okay.
made it was just making it confusing in my brain because I was like, wait, what are we?
Yep,
Like, I get what we're talking about, but also
yep.
it was just like the way it was written was like not quite right. Thank you. Okay, so the school committee's policy concerning HIV is established to ensure the following: 1, protect against the transmission of HIV to other employees or students.
Maybe just employees or students, not others.
Yep, so the goal of this policy is to protect against the transmission of HIV to students and employees.
To
That's not the right
employees or students.
grammar.
Yeah, transmission to.
I'm afraid to scan down.
Would you,
Looks fine to me, I don't know.
okay, leave that then. Protect the health and well-being of an HIV positive person as well to enable that person to take part in normal school activities and work duties with a minimum of disruption. Andrew, is that
I would say
legally?
protect the health and well-being of the HIV positive person so that person may take part in
Yeah.
normal school activities or work duties within an administration.
Yeah, the as well as is
As well as,
changing up. So protect the health and well-being of the HIV positive person as so.
get rid of as.
Yeah, we don't need that. So that person may take part in normal school activities or work duties with minimum of disruption, with a minimum of disruption.
With
Say
minimal
minimum
disruption.
disruption.
With what?
I'll take
Minimal-
out of.
Minimal disruption?
Okay, then number 3, inform students, parents, do you wanna add guardian?
Yep.
Inform student parents, guardians, teachers, staff, and members of the community about the district's HIV policy and about safe practices regarding HIV transmission, such as practicing universal precautions and use of PPE, personal protective equipment. We still want that to say that?
Personal protective equipment should be not in parentheses, PPE should be in parentheses. After.
Correct.
We will give Rob the grammar award for today.
It's the legal definition award, correct?
The what?
That's how you would define a legal
Yeah.
term.
So the purpose of this policy is to inform people about, so the purpose of this policy is to inform people about this policy.
Purpose of the,
That's what it says, like you read, like if you
Say that
skip,
again?
like
I was-
sometimes when you have a bulleted list, like it gets weird, so I always read the first sentence with that statement to see if it still makes sense, like not in a list, and it doesn't.
where's the first, what?
So like the top of this bullet is the school committee's policy concerning HIV is established to ensure the following. So we're trying to ensure that we're protecting against the transmission of HIV. We're trying to ensure that we're protecting the health and wellness of an HIV positive person. We're trying to inform students, parents, and guardians about our policy and safe practices.
So it should be worded in terms
I
of
would go like-
ensure students, parents, guardians, teachers, staff, members of the community are informed about,
Yeah.
right, just for the wording's sake.
Ensure that, yeah, you would go. Are aware of safe practices. The whole sentence doesn't make sense.
Students, parents, guardians, teachers, staff, and members of the community about district's HIV policy and about safe practices regarding HIV transmission, such as practicing universal precautions and use of personal
Let's see. Members of the
We're
community
basically
are
saying
informed
that-
about,
I
right?
think what it originally was trying to say is that this policy is to ensure that members of, like, all those people know about safe practices regarding HIV transmission. That's what it originally said. And then Jen tried to update it to, like, current time practice language, but so, like, I guess what is our goal of this policy?
Wouldn't it be to inform the students, parents, guardians, teachers, and staff, members of the community about safe practices regarding?
But
Policy?
is that what we're gonna do? Like, are we sending out something every
See,
year
I-
to members of the community
I don't think you
about how
have
not
to.
to?
I mean, just my read on that is it's a
You do
policy,
if
it's
you put it
published
in
on
your
your
policy.
website. Well, but that's how you're
Yeah.
informing them, it's in your policy manual, it's online.
So take this whole thing out?
Like, do you need this part?
There's
But
a lot of this you don't need.
some of that is back in the
There's a lot of this. You
You
don't
see.
need.
policy
Quote
from the state. So
Which policy, what are you looking at?
Rhode Island Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed and the Rhode Island Department of Health policy on HIV, infected students and employees, that was pulled straight from there.
Is that linked in the stock anywhere?
I
It's not
found it when I
linked, I
Googled
try
it.
not to link, but
Not linked, but is it referenced?
it's
in something?
referenced, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is from,
Which one is that, Ken?
it's the one from the Department of Health.
Can you give me the,
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I was looking for
Can you just
a
drop it
page
in the bottom of that doc, and then that way we can all get it?
That's what I was gonna put.
Awesome.
There's no date on here from when this is from.
It's
Let's see
old.
that.
It's old.
I mean, they're citing stuff from 1990 in it, 1989. Not that it's that old, but like, I usually will like use citations if it doesn't have a date on it to get like a clue of when it was. Is it on their website?
It's links back to there. I did a Google search and that's how I found it, but it links back to the healthri.gov. If you look under purpose, that, letter C is inform students, parents, teachers, school employees, members of the community about safe practices regarding HIV transmission and the school's HIV policy.
go to their Department of Health, right?
It's not too easy to find on their website.
I couldn't, I did, this is the first time I'm seeing this, I couldn't find it on their actual website.
Are you off that? Because I can't find it on their website either, at least.
Yeah, I'm trying to go the other way.
Cool.
Cause although this document is helpful, if they've sunsetted it, I don't wanna be including stuff in it that doesn't need to be.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna propose, because everything's turned 14 different colors in here. I'm going to come back with
Thanks to
this.
Andrew. You deleted.
It's now 25 pages long. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna drop the sites in each thing so that we can see where everything comes from. I'll see if I can find this policy alive and well and living on the internet somewhere.
Yeah, or we can email the Department of Health
Yeah.
and even just ask them.
And I'll bring this one back the next time.
Does our policy reference 23-622, the discrimination one?
I have 23-617 and 23-6-3.
So there's one, I was just, when I was Googling to try to find what Ken was looking at, I found I found a different one that had that's the discrimination, like against employees one. I think is 23-622 maybe.
I've got 23-611 expressly prohibits against individuals who are suspected with or perceived to be infected with HIV. So that comes from that one, I thought. So we are making progress. We have gotten through several today.
Is that Jen the optimist?
It's Jen the delirious at this point.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna keep going with these for the next meeting until we move all these off, but the next ones will be attendance drafting stuff, attendance boundaries, me, transportation, you, Erin, HIV, me. Andrew, I started on the combination of the anti-harassment and the Title IX. I'm about like 3/4 of the way through, so when I'm done that, I'm gonna send it to
right
you.
to me, yep.
And then, so that just leaves that we haven't talked about the school committee meetings I brought back here based on the quick discussion that we had in the school committee meeting the other night for the comments that were raised about that. We'll need to discuss that. And, we still need to review the dress code. And those are the ones that remain outstanding on this list.
And our next meeting's when?
Our next meeting is, today's the 30th. It is
28th?
the 28th, yes.
I'll make sure I have the
It's
red
not
line
really
with the.
28.
Well, the Indigenous Peoples' Day is the 14th, so I'm happy to schedule it in between, but I was trying to defer to you and and not.
The calendar's already a mess.
Okay. Yeah, so the next one is the 28th at 4:30.
Did you mention the attendance one is gonna go on the next one?
I did not, Rob, I totally ignored that, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
Those
think
are-
I
those
think
are
it got
two.
lumped in with the other attendance
I'm not
looking
offended,
ones.
it's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Those will be on that next one too.
And attendance will be on the next one also. I saw you've been working
Anything
on
that's
that.
left,
Thank you.
basically.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Let me just make sure I gave the right date, hold on one second.
Did you have one in between those? Is what I'm curious about. Let me see.
Today is the 30th, correct?
Yeah, like you're not meeting for 1 month. That feels like.
I know, it's a
not-
lot.
That feels not like you.
It
to
is
be
not,
honest.
but Ken was really very plaintive when we talked
I will say
last time.
if we go off of our schedule and trying to schedule, it's gonna get tough. We're still going through all of the advisory
Yep.
subcommittees and trying to find
Mm.
dates and times that match, so.
That's why I skipped it and came to the 28th. Is there anything else that we need to address before we adjourn? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second? Okay, all in favor?
Is it Tuesday, October 28th is our next,
No, it's Monday.
Monday.
Monday the